Hello students, welcome to PD Life Science Academy for the happy learning. Today's reading topic is from NCERT Biology textbook for 12th standard, chapter number 8. The name of chapter is The Human Health and the Diseases. Health for the long time was considered as a state of the body and the mind where there was a balance of the certain humors. This is what early Greek like the Hippocrates as well as the Indian Ayurveda system of the medicine asserted. It was thought that the person with a black bile belongs to the hot personality and would have the fever. This idea was arrived at by pure reflective thoughts. The discovery of the blood circulation by the William Harvey using the experimental method and the demonstration of the normal body temperature in the person with a black bile using the thermometer disproved the good humor hypothesis of the health. In later years, the biology states that the mind influences through the neural system and the endocrine system. Our immune system maintain our health. Hence, the mind and the mental state can affect our health. Of course, the health is affected by first is the genetic disorders, deficiency with which the child is born, and the deficiency or a defect which the child inherits from the parents from the birth. Second is the infection, and the third is a lifestyle including the food, water we take, and the rest and exercise we give to our bodies, habits that we have or lack, etc. The term health is a very frequently used by everybody. How do we define it? The health does not simply mean the absence of the disease or a physical fitness. It could be defined as a state of the complete physical, mental and the social as well as social well-being. When the people are healthy, they are more efficient at work. This increases the productivity and the bringing the economic prosperity. Health also increases the longevity of the people and reduce the infant and the maternal mortality. The balanced diet, the personal hygiene and the regular exercise are very important to maintain the good health. Yoga has been the practice since the time immemorial to achieve the physical and the mental health. Awareness about the disease and their effect on the different bodies functions, vaccination or the immunization against the infectious diseases, the proper disposal of the waste, control of the vectors and maintenance of the hygiene in the food, water, resources are necessary for achieving the good health. When the functioning of the one or the more organs or systems of the body is the adversely affected, the characterized by the appearance of the various signs and the symptoms, we say that we are not healthy, that is, we have a disease. Disease can be broadly grouped into the infectious or non-infectious diseases which are easily transmitted from the one person to the another are called as infectious diseases. Infectious diseases are very common and every one of us suffers from these at some times or others. Some of the infectious diseases like the AIDS are the fatal. Among the non-infectious disease, the cancer is the major cause of the death. The drug and the alcohol abuse also affect our health adversely. The common diseases in the human, a wide range of the organisms belonging to the bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoans, helminths, etc. could cause the disease in a man. Such a disease-causing organism is called as a pathogen. Most parasites are therefore the pathogens as they causes the harm to the host by living in or on them. The pathogens can enter our body by various means and multiply and interfere with the normal vital activities, resulting in the morphological and the functional damage. Pathogens have to adapt to life within the environment of the host. For example, the pathogens that enters the gut must know a way of the serving in the stomach at a low pH and resting the various digestive enzymes. A few representative members from the different groups of the pathogenic organism are discussed here along with the diseases caused by them. The preventive and the control measure against these diseases in the general are also briefly described. Salmonella typhi, a pathogenic bacterium which causes the typhoid fever in a human being. This pathogen generally enters the small intestine through the food and the water contaminated with them and migrates to the other organ through the blood. The sustained high fever, the 39 degree to the 40 degree centigrade, the weakness, stomach pain, constipation, headache, and the loss of the appetite are also some common symptoms of these diseases. Internal perforation and the death may occur in the several cases. The typhoid fever could be confirmed by the Vidal test. A classic case of the medicine that Mary Mallon nicknamed the Typhoid Mary is worth mentioning here. She was the cook by the profession and was a typhoid carrier who continued to spread the typhoid for several years through the food she prepared. The bacteria like the Streptococcus pneumoniae and the Haemophilus influenza are responsible for the disease of the pneumonia in the human, which infect the alveoli or air-filled sac of the lungs. As a result of the infection, the alveoli get filled with the fluid, leading to the several problems and respiration. The symptoms of the pneumonia includes the fever, chills, cough, and the headache. In several cases, the lips and the fingernails may turn gray to bluish in color. The healthy person acquires the infection by inhaling a droplets or aerosols released by the infectious person, and even by the sharing the glasses or utensils with and the infected persons. The dysentery, plague, diarrhea, etc. are the some of them bacterial diseases in the man. Many viruses also causes the diseases in the human being. The rhinovirus represents the one such group of the viruses which causes the one of the most infectious human elements, the common cold. They infect the nose and the respiratory passage but not the lungs. The common cold is characterized by the nasal congestion and the discharge, sore throat, the hoarseness, cough, headache, tiredness, etc., which usually last for the 3 to 7 days. The droplet resulting from the cough or the sneeze of the infected person are either inhaled directly or transmitted through the contaminated objects such as the pen, book, cups, doorknobs, computer, keyboards or mouse, etc., and causes the infection in the healthy person. The some of the human disease are caused by the protozoans too. You might have heard about the malaria, a disease man has been fighting since many years. The Plasmodium, a tiny protozoan, is responsible for this disease. Different species of the Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malaria, Plasmodium falciparum, etc., are responsible for the different types of malaria. Of course, the malignant malaria caused by the Plasmodium falciparum is the most serious one and can even be fatal. Let us take the glance at the life cycle of the Plasmodium. The Plasmodium enters the human body as a sporozoites or infectious form through the bite of the infected female or Anopheles mosquito. The parasite initially multiplies within the liver cells and then attracts the red blood cells, that is the RBCs, resulting in their rupture. The rupture of the RBCs is associated with the release of the toxic substances, the hemozoin, which is responsible for the chill and the high fever recurring every 3 to 4 days. When a female Anopheles mosquito bites the infected person, this parasite enters the mosquito body and therefore the further development. The parasite multiply within them to form the sporozoites. that are stored in their salivary glands. When these mosquitoes bites to the human, the sporozoites are introduced into his or her body, thereby initiating the events mentioned above. It is interesting to note that the malarial parasite requires the two hosts, human and the mosquito, to complete its life cycle. The female Anopheles mosquito is the vector or a transmitting agent too. The Entamoeba histolytica is the protozoan parasite in the large intestine of the human, which causes the amoebiasis or amoebic dysentery. The symptoms of the disease include the constipation, abdominal pain and the cramps, stool with excess mucus and the blood clots. The houseflies act as a mechanical carrier and serve as a transmit the parasite from the feces of the infected person to the food and the food products, thereby the contaminating them. The drinking water and the food contaminated by the fecal matter are the main source of the infection. Ascaris, the common round worm, and the Vaucheria, the filarial worm, are the some of the helminths which are known to be the pathogenic to the man. Ascaris in the intestinal parasite causes the ascariasis. The symptom of this disease includes the internal bleeding, muscular pain, fever, anemia, blockage of the intestinal passage. The egg of the parasite are excreted along with the feces of the infected person, which contaminate the soil, water, plant, etc. A healthy person acquires this infection through the contaminated water, vegetables, fruits, etc. The Vaucheria bancrafti and the Vaucheria malai, the filial worm, causes a slowly developing chronic inflammation of the organ in which they live for the many years. Usually the lymphatic vessels of the lower limbs, and the disease is called as a elephantiasis or a filariasis. The genital organs are also often affected, resulting in the gross deformities. The pathogens are transmitted to the healthy person through the bite by a female mosquito vectors, and many fungi belongs to the genera the Microsporum, the Trichophyton and the Epidermophyton are responsible for the ringworm, which is one of the most common infectious diseases in the man. The appearance of the dry scaly lesion on the various parts of the body, such as the skin, nails and the scale, are the main symptom of the diseases. These lesions are accompanied by the intense itching. The heat and the moisture help these fungi to grow, which make them thrive in the skin fold, such as those in the growing or between toes. The ringworms are generally acquired from the soil or by using the towel, clothes, or even a comb of the infected individuals. Maintenance of the personal and the public hygienes are very important for the prevention and the control of the many infectious diseases. The measures for the personal hygiene include the keeping the body clean, consumption of the clean drinking water, food, vegetables, fruits, etc. The public hygiene includes the proper disposal of the waste and excreta, the periodic cleaning and the disinfection of the water reservoirs and the pool, then the cesspools and the tanks, and observing the standard practices of the hygienes in the public catering. These measures are particularly essential where the infectious agents are transmitted through the food, water, such as the typhoid, amoebiasis and ascariasis. In case of the airborne diseases such as the pneumonia and the common cold, in addition to above measures, the close contact with the infected person or their belongings should be avoided. For diseases such as the malaria and the filariasis that has transmitted through the insect vector, the most important measure is to control the to control or eliminate the vectors and their breeding places. This can be achieved by avoiding the stagnation of the water in and around the residential areas, regular cleaning of the household coolers, use of the mosquito nets, introducing the fish like the gambusia in the pond that feeds on the mosquito larvae, spraying of the insecticidal in the ditches and the drainage areas of the swamp, etc. In addition, the door and the windows should be provided with wire mesh to prevent the entry of the mosquito. Such a precaution have becomes the more important, especially in a light of the recent widespread incidences of the vector-borne Aedes mosquito and a disease like the dengue and the chikungunya in many parts of the India. The advancement made in the biological science have used to effectively deals with the many infectious diseases. The use of the vaccines and the immunization programs have enabled us to completely eradicate a deadly disease like the smallpox. A large number of the other infectious diseases, diphtheria, pneumonia, and the tetanus, have been controlled to large extent by the use of the vaccines. Biotechnology, about which we will read more in the chapter number 12, it is at the verge of the making available newer and the safer vaccines. Discovery of the antibiotics and the various other drugs has also enabled us to effectively treat the infectious diseases. The 8.2 is the immunity. Every day we are exposed to the large number of the infectious agent. However, the only few of these exposures result in the diseases. Why? This is due to the fact that the body is able to defend itself from the most of these foreign agents. And this overall ability of the host to fight the disease causing the organisms and conferred by the immune system is called as immunity. Immunity is of the two types, the innate immunity and the acquired immunity. The 8.2.1 is the innate immunity. Innate immunity is a non-specific type of defense that is present at the time of birth. This is accomplished by providing the different types of barrier to entry of the foreign agents into our body. The innate immunity consists of the four types of the barriers, and these are: first one is a physical barrier. The skin is our body. Skin on our body is the main barrier which prevents the entry of the microorganism. The mucus coating of the epithelium lining the respiratory, gastrointestinal and the urogenital tracts also helps in the trapping the microbes entering our body. Second is a physiological barrier. The acid in the stomach, saliva in the mouth, tears from the eyes, all prevents the microbial growth. The third one is a cellular barrier. The certain types of the leukocyte, that is the WBCs of our bodies, like the polymorphonuclear leukocytes or PMNL, the neutrophils and the monocyte and the natural killers type of the lymphocyte in the blood, as well as the macrophages in the tissue, can phagocyte and destroys the microbes. The fourth one is the cytokine barriers. The virus infected cells secrete the proteins called as interferons, which protect the non-infected cells from the further viral infection. The 8.2.2 is the acquired immunity. Acquired immunity, on the other hand, is a pathogen specific. It is characterized by the memory, and this means when our body encounters a pathogen for a first time, it produces a response called as a primary response, which is of the low intensity. The subsequent encounter with the same pathogen elicit a highly intensified secondary or an anamnestic response, and this ascribed to the fact that our body appears to have a memory of the first encounter. The primary and the secondary immune responses are carried out with the help of the two special type of the lymphocyte present in our blood, that is the B lymphocyte and the T lymphocyte. The B lymphocyte produce an army of the protein in response to the pathogen into our blood to fight with them. These proteins are called as antibodies. The T cell themselves do not secrete the antibodies but helps in a B cell to produce them. Each antibody molecules have the 4 peptide chains, and the 2 small called as a light chain and the 2 long are the heavy chains. Hence an antibody is represented as the H2L2. Different types of the antibodies are produced in our body. The antigen A, antigen A, antigen M, antigen E, antigen G are the sum of them. A cartoon of an antibody is given in the figure because these antibodies are found in the blood. The response is also called as a humoral immune response. This is one of the 2 types of our acquired immune responses, the body mediated. The second type is called as a cell mediated immune response or a cell mediated immunity, that is the CMI. The T lymphocyte mediate the CMI. The very often when one human organ like the heart, eyes, liver, kidney fails to function the satisfactory, transplantation is the only remedy to enable the patient to live a normal life. Then scratches begin to find a suitable donor. Why is it that the organ cannot be taken from the just anybody? What is that? The doctors check the graft from the just any source, and animals, another is a primates or any human being cannot be made, since the graft would be rejected sooner or later. The tissue matching, the blood group matching are essential before the undertaking and graft or a transplant, and even after this the patient has to take the immunosuppressant all his or her life. The body is able to differentiate the self and the non-self, and the cell mediated immune responses is responsible for the graft rejection. The 8.2.3 is active and the passive immunity. When the host is exposed to an antigen which may be in the form of the living or a dead microbes or other proteins, antibodies are produced in the host body. This type of the immunity is called as active immunity. Active immunity is a slow and take the time to give its a full effective response. Injecting the microbe deliberately during the immunization and the infectious organism gaining access into the body during the natural infection induce the active immunity. When the ready-made antibodies are directly given to protect the body against the foreign agents, it is called as a passive immunity. Do you know why the mother milk is considered a very essential for the newborn baby infant? The yellowish fluid, it is the colostrum, secreted by the mother during the initial days of the lactation, has abundance of antibodies, that is the IgA, to protect the infant. The fetus also receive some antibodies from their mother through the placenta during the pregnancy, and these are some examples of the passive immunity. The 8.2.4 is a vaccination and the immunization. The principle of the immunization or the vaccination is based on the properties of the memory of the immune system. The vaccination, the preparation of the antigen protein of the pathogen or inactivated or a weakened pathogen or a vaccine are introduced into the body. The antibody produced in the body against these antigen would neutralize the pathogenic agent during the actual infection. The vaccine also generates the memory, that is the B and the T cell, that recognize the pathogen quickly on the subsequent exposure and overwhelm the invaders with the massive production of the antibodies. If the person is infected with some deadly microbes to which the quick immune response is required, as in the tetanus, we need to directly inject the performed antibodies or antitoxins, a preparation containing the antibodies to the toxin. Even in case of the snake bite, the injection which is given to the patient contains a performed antibodies against the snake venom, and this type of the immunization is called as a passive immunization. The recombinant DNA technology has allowed the production of the antigenic polypeptide of the pathogen in a bacteria and the yeast. The vaccine produced using this approach allows the large scale production and hence the greater availability for the immunization. For example, the hepatitis B vaccine produced from the yeast. The 8.2.5 is allergies. When you have gone to a new place, suddenly you started sneezing, wheezing for no explained reasons, and when you went away, your symptoms disappear. Did this happen to you? Some of us are sensitive to some particles in environment. The above mentioned reaction could be because of the allergy of the pollen, mites, etc., which are the different in the different places. The exaggerated response of the immune system is a certain antigen represent in environment is called as allergies. The substance to which such as the immune response is produced are called as allergens. The antibodies produced to these are of the IgE type, and a common example of the allergens are the mites in the dust, pollen, animal danders, etc. The symptom of the allergic reactions including the sneezing, the watery eyes, running nose, and the difficulty in the breathing. Allergy is due to the release of the chemical like the histamine and the serotonin from the mast cells. For determining the cause of the allergies, the patient is exposed to or injected with a very small doses of the possible allergens and the reactions studied. The use of the drug like the antihistamine, adrenaline, and the steroids quickly reduce the symptoms of the allergies. Somehow modern days the lifestyle has resulted in a lowering of the immunity and a more sensitive to the allergens. More and more children in the metro cities of the India suffering from the allergies and the asthma due to the sensitivity of the environment. This could be because of the protected environment provided early in life. In 8.2.6 is the autoimmunity. The memory-based acquired immunity involves the higher vertebrate based on the ability to differentiate the foreign organism, for example the pathogen, from the self cell. While we still do not understand the basis of these, the two corollaries of this ability have to understood. The one higher vertebrate can distinguish the foreign molecule as well as the foreign organism. The most of experimental immunology deals with these aspects. The two sometimes due to the genetic and the other known as the reasons, and the body attract the self cells, and this result in a damage to the body and is called as an autoimmune disease. The rheumatoid arthritis, which affects the many people in our society, is an autoimmune disease. The 8.2.7 is the immune system in the body. The human immune system consists of the lymphoid organ, tissues, cells, and the soluble molecules like the antibodies. As you have read, the immune system is unique in the sense that it recognizes the foreign antigen, responds to these and remember them. The immune system also play an important role in the allergic reactions. the autoimmune disease, and the organ transplantation. The lymphoid organ, and these are the organ where the origin and or the maturation and the proliferation of the lymphocyte occurs. The primary lymphocyte organs are bone marrow and the thymus, where immature or lymphocyte differentiate into the antigen sensitive lymphocyte. After maturation, the lymphocyte migrates to the secondary lymphoid organ like the spleen, lymph node, tonsils, prayer patch of the small intestine, and appendix. The secondary lymphoid organ provides the site for the interaction of the lymphocyte with the antigen, and which then proliferate to becomes the elector cells. The location of the various lymphoid organs in the human body is shown in figure. The bone marrow is the main lymphoid organ where the all blood cells, including the lymphocyte, are produced. The thymus is a lobed organ located near the heart and beneath the breastbone. The thymus is quite larger at the time of the birth but keeps reducing in the size with age, and by the time of the puberty is attained it reduces to a very small size. Both the bone marrow and the thymus provide the microenvironment for the development and the maturation of the T lymphocyte. A spleen is a larger bean-shaped organ. It mainly contains the lymphocyte and the phagocytes. It acts as a filter of the blood by the trapping the blood-borne microorganisms. The spleen also has a larger reservoir of the erythrocytes. The lymph node are the small solid structure located at different points along the lymphatic system. The lymph nodes serve as a trap and the microorganism or the other antigens which happen to get into the lymph and the tissue fluid. The antigen trapped in the lymph node and responsible for the activation of the lymphocyte present there and cause the immune responses. There is a lymphoid tissue also located within the lining of the major tracts, that is the respiratory, digestive, and the urinogenital tract, called as a mucosa associated lymphoid tissues, that is the MALT, M-A-L-T. It constitutes about the 50% center of the lymphoid tissue in the body, human body. The 8.3 is AIDS. The word AIDS stands for the acquired deficiency syndrome. This means the deficiency of the immune system acquires during the lifetime of an individual, indicating that it is not a congenital disease. The syndrome means a group of the symptoms. The AIDS was first reported in the 1981, and in the last 25 years or so, it has spread all over the world, killing the more than the 25 million persons. AIDS is caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, that is the HIV, and the member of the groups of the virus called as a retrovirus, which has an envelope enclosing the RNA genome. The transmission of the HIV infection generally occurs by sexual contact with the infected person, by a transfusion of the contaminated blood and the blood products, by sharing the infected needles, as in the case of the intravenous drug abuse, and from the infected mother to her child through the placenta. So the people who are at the high risk of the getting this infection included the individual who have the multiple sexual partners, drug addicts who take the drugs intravenously, individuals who require the repeated blood transfusion, and the children born to an HIV infected mothers. Do you know when do people need the repeated blood transfusion? Find out and make the list of such conditions. It is important to note that the HIV or AIDS is not spread by mere touch or a physical contact. It is spread only through the blood fluid. It is hence imperative for the physical and the physiological well-being that the HIV or AIDS infected person are not isolated from the family and society. There is always a time large between the infection and the appearance of the AIDS syndrome. and this period is vary from the few months to the many years, usually the 5 to 10 years. After getting into the body of the person, the virus enter into the macrophages where the RNA genome of the virus replicate to form the viral DNA with the help of the enzyme reverse transcriptation. This viral DNA gets incorporated into the host cell, the DNA, and direct the infected cells to produce the virus particles. The macrophage continue to produce the virus and in this way act like the HIV factory. Simultaneously, the HIV enters into the helper T lymphocyte, that is the TH, replicate and produce the progeny virus, and the progeny virus release in the blood attack the other helper T lymphocyte, and this is repeated leading to the progressive decrease in the number of the helper T lymphocyte in the body of the infected persons. During this period, the person suffers from both of the fever, diarrhea and the weight loss. Due to the decrease in the number of the helper T lymphocyte, the person starts suffering from the infection that could have been otherwise overcome, such as those due to the bacteria, especially the mycobacterium, the viruses, fungi, and even the parasite like the toxoplasma. The patient become too immunodeficient that he or she is unable to protect himself or herself against this infection. A widely used diagnostic test for the AIDS is enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, that is the ELISA. The treatment of the AIDS is antiretroviral drugs is only partially effective, and they can only prolong the life of the patient but cannot prevent the death, which is the inevitable. The prevention of the AIDS. As the AIDS has no cure, the prevention is the best option, and moreover, the HIV infection more often spread due to the conscious behavior and the pattern, and is not a sometime that happen inadvertently, like the pneumonia or the typhoid. Of course, the infection of the blood transfusion patient, newborn from the mothers, etc., may take place due to the poor monitoring. The only cause may be ignorance, and that it has been rightly said, don't die of the ignorance. In our country, the National AIDS Control Organization, that is the NACO, and the other non-governmental organization, that is the NGOs, are doing a lot to educate the people about the AIDS, who has started a number of programs to prevent the spreading of the HIV infection, making the blood from the blood bank safe from the HIV, ensuring the use of the only disposable needles and the syringe in the public and the private hospitals and the clinics, the free distribution of the condom, and the controlling the drug abuse, advocating the safe sex, and promoting the regular checkup for the HIV in the susceptible population are the some such steps taken up. Infection with the HIV and having the AIDS is something that should not be hidden, since then the infection may spread to many more peoples. The HIV or the AIDS infected peoples need help and the sympathy instead of being shunned by the society. Unless the society recognizes it as a problem to be dealt with and within the collective manner, a chance of the wider spread of the disease increase the manifold. It is the malady that can be only tackled by the society and the medical fraternity acting together to prevent the spread of the disease. 8.4 is a cancer. Cancer is one of the most dreaded disease of the human being and is a major cause of the death all over the globe. More than the million Indians suffers from the cancer, and a large number of them die from the annually. The mechanism that underline the development of the cancer and the oncogenic transformation of the cells, its treatment and the control have been some of the most intense area of the research in the biology and the medicine. In our body, the cell growth and the differentiation is a highly controlled and regulated. In a cancer cell, there is a broken down of these regulatory mechanism. The normal cell shows the property called as a contact inhibition, by the virtue of which the contact with the other cell inhibit their uncontrolled growth. The cancer cell appear to have lost this property. As a result of this, the cancerous cell just continue to divide and giving rise to the masses of the cell called as the tumors. The tumor are of the two types, the benign and the malignant. Benign tumor is normally remains confined to their original location and do not spread to the other parts of the body and cause the little damage. The malignant tumor, on the other hand, are the mass of the proliferating tissues called as a neoplastic or a tumor cell. These cells grow very rapidly, invading the damaging the surrounding normal tissues. As this cell is actively divides and grow, they also starves the normal cells by competing for the vital nutrients. The cell slots from such a tumor reach distant site through the blood, and wherever they get loaded in the body, they start a new tumor cell there. This property called as a metastasis is the most feared property of the malignant tumor. The cause of the cancers. The transformation of the normal cell into the cancerous neoplastic cells may induce by the physical, chemical or a biological agent, and these agents are called as a carcinogens. Ionizing radiations like the X-ray and the gamma rays and the non-ionizing radiations like the UV causes the DNA damage and leading to the neoplastic transformation. The chemical carcinogen present in the tobacco smoke have been identified as a major cause of the lung cancer. Cancer causing the virus is called as an oncogenic virus, have the genes called as a viral oncogenes. Furthermore, the several genes called as a cellular oncogenes, the C oncogene or a proto-oncogenes, have been identified in the normal cell, which when activated under the certain conditions could lead to the oncogenic transformation of the cell. The cancer detection and the diagnosis. The early detection of the cancer is essential as it allows the disease to treat and successfully in the many cases. The cancer detection is based on the biopsy and the histopathology studied of the tissues and the blood and the bone marrow test for the increased the cell count in the case of the leukemia. In biopsy, a piece of the suspected tissues cut into the thin sections is stained and examined under the microscope. The histopathological studies by the pathologist, the technique like the radiography use the X-ray, the CT that is the computer tomography and the MRI that is the magnetic resonance imaging are very successful to detect the cancers of the internal organ. The computed tomography uses the X-ray to generate the three-dimensional image of the internal of the object. MRI uses the strong magnetic field and the non-ionizing radiations to accurately detect the pathological and the physiological changes in the living tissues. Antibody against the cancer specific antigen are also used for the detection of the certain cancers, and the technique of the molecular biology can apply to detect the gene in the individuals with inherited susceptibility to the certain cancers. Identification of such genes which predisposed and individual to certain cancers and may be very helpful in the prevention of the cancer. Such an individual may be advised to avoid the exposure to the particular carcinogens to which they are susceptible. For example, the tobacco smoke in case of the lung cancer, the treatment of the cancer. The common approaches for the treatment of the cancer are the surgery, radiation therapy and the immunotherapy. In radiotherapy, the tumor cell is radiated lethally, taking a proper care of the normal tissues surrounding the tumor mass, and the several chemotherapeutic drugs are used to kill the cancerous cell. Some of these are the specific for the particular tumor. Majority of drugs have the side effect like the hair loss, anemia, etc. And the most cancerous treatment most cancers are treated by the combination of the surgery, radiotherapy and the chemotherapy. The tumor cell have been shown to avoid the detection and the destruction by the immune system. Therefore, the patient are given the substances called as a biological response or a modifier such as the alpha interferon which activate their immune system and help in the destroying the tumor. The 8.5 is a drug and alcohol abuse. The survey and the statistics show that use of the drug and the alcohol has been on the rise, especially among the youth. This is really a cause of the concern as it could result in a many harmful effects. The proper education and the guidance would enable the youth of the safeguard themselves against this dangerous behavior pattern and follow the healthy lifestyle. The drugs which are commonly abused are the opioids, cannabinoids and the cocoa alkaloids. Majority of these are obtained from the flowering plants and some are obtained from the fungi. The opioids are the drugs which binds to the specific opioids receptor present in our central nervous system and the gastrointestinal tract. The heroin, commonly called as a smack, is a chemically diacetyl morphine, which is a white, odorless, bitter crystalline compound, and this contains the acetylation of the morphine, which is extracted from the latex of the poppy plant, that is the Papaver somniferum. The generally taken by the snorting and the injection. The heroin is a depressant and the slow down the body function. The cannabinoids are the group of the chemicals which interacts with the cannabinoids receptor present principally in the brain. The neural cannabinoids are obtained from the inflorescence of the plant like the cannabis sativa. The flower of the top leaves and the resins of the cannabis plant are used in the various combination to produce the marijuana, the hashish and the charas and the ganja, generally taken by the inhalation and the oral injections, and these are known for the effect on the cardiovascular system of the body. The coca alkaloid or a cocaine is obtained from the coca plant and Erythroxylum coca, native to the South America, and it interfere with the transport of the neurotransmitter dopamine. Cocaine, commonly called as a cocaine and the cracks, is usually snorted. It has a potent stimulating action on the central nervous system, producing a sense of the euphoria and increase the energy. The excessive doses of the cocaine cause the hallucination. The other well-known plant with the hallucinogenic properties are the Atropa belladonna and the datura. These days, cannabinoids are also being abused by some sport persons. The drug like the barbiturates, amphetamines, benzodiazepines, and the other similar drugs that are normally used as a medicine to help the patient cope with the mental illness like the depression and the insomnia are often abused. The morphine is a very effective sedative and the painkiller, and is a very useful in the patient who have undergoing the surgery. The several plant, the fruit, seeds having the hallucinogenic property have been used for the hundreds of years in the folk medicine, the religious ceremonies, and the ritual all over the globe. When these are taken for the purpose other than the medicinal use or in a amount or a frequency that impaired one physiological or a psychological function, it constitutes a drug abuse. The smoking also paves the way to hard the drugs. The tobacco has been used by the human being for the more than the 400 years. It is a smoke, chewed, or is used as a stuff. The tobacco contains a large number of the chemical substances, including the nicotine and alkaloid. A nicotine stimulates the adrenal gland to release the adrenaline and the noradrenaline into the blood circulation, both of which rise the blood pressure and increase the heart rate. The smoking is associated with increased the incidence of the cancer of the throat, urinary bladder and the throat, or a bronchitis, emphysema, coronary heart disease, gastric ulcer, etc. The tobacco chewing is associated with the increase and a risk of the cancer of the oral cavity. The smoking increase the carbon monoxide, that is the CO, content in a blood and reduce the concentration of the heme-bound oxygen. This causes the oxygen deficiency in the body. When one buys packets of the cigarette, one cannot miss the statutory warning that is present on the packing with a warns against the smoking and say how it is injurious to the health. Yet the smoking is a very prevalent in the society, both among the young and the old. Knowing the danger of the smoking and the chewing of the tobacco and its addictive nature, the youth and the old need to avoid this habit. Any addict requires the counseling and the medical help to get rid of the habit. The 8.5.1 is the adolescence and the drug or a drug abuse. The adolescence means both the period and the process during which the child becomes the mature in terms of his or her attitude and the belief for the effective participation in the society. The period between the 12 to 18 years of the age may be thought of as an adolescence period. In other words, adolescence is the bridge linking childhood and adulthood. Adolescence is accompanied by the several biological and the behavior changes. Adolescence is thus a very vulnerable phase of the mental and the psychological development of an individual. The curiosity is a need for the adventure and the excitement and the experimentation constitute a common cause which motivate the youngster and towards the drug and alcohol use. A child's natural curiosity motivates him or her to experience, and this complicated the further by the effect that might be the pursued as a benefit of the alcohol or the drug use. Thus, the first use of the drug or alcohol may be out of the curiosity or experimentation, but later the child starts using these to escape the facing problems. Of late, the stress from the pressure to excel in academics or the examination had played a significant role in the persuading the youngsters to try the alcohol and the drugs. The perception among the youth and that is the cool or a progressive to the smoke. Use the drug or alcohol is also in a way a major cause of the youth to start these habits. The television, movies, newspaper, internet also help to promote these perceptions. The other factors that have been seen to be associated with the drug and alcohol abuse amongst the adolescent are the unstable or unsupportive family structures and the peer pressure. The 8.5.2 is addiction and the dependence. Because the perceive the benefits, the drug are the frequently used repeatedly. The most important thing which is a fail to realize the inherent addictive nature of the alcohol and the drug. The addiction is a psychological attachment to the certain effect and such as the euphoria and the temporary feeling of the well-being associated with the drug and the alcohol. This drives people to take on them even when these are not needed or even when their use becomes the self-destructive. With repeats the use of the drug, the tolerance level of the receptor present in our body increases. Consequently, the receptor respond only to a higher doses of the drug or alcohol, leading to the greater intake and the addiction. However, it should be clearly borne in mind that use of these drugs, even once, can be forerunner to addiction, and thus the addictive potential of the drug and the alcohol put the user into the vicious circle leading to their regular use or abuse from which he or she may not be able to get out. In absence of any guidance or a counseling, the person gets addicted and becomes the dependent on their use. The dependence is the tendency of the body to manifest the characteristic and unpleasant or withdrawals the syndromes if regular dose of the drugs or alcohol is abruptly discontinued. This is characterized by the anxiety, the shakiness, and the nausea and the sweating, which may be relieved when use is assumed again. In some cases, the withdrawal symptoms can be severe and even life-threatening, and the person may need the medical supervision. Dependence leads the patient to ignore all the social norms in order to get sufficient funds to satiate his or her need, and this results in many social adjustment problems. 8.5.3 is the effect of the drugs or alcohol abuse. The immediate adverse effect of the drug and the alcohol abuse are manifested in the form of the reckless behavior, vandalism, and the violence. The excessive dose of the drug may lead to the coma and the death due to the respiratory failure, the heart failure, and the cerebral hemorrhage. A combination of the drug and their intake along with the alcohol generally result in the overdosing and even the death. The most common warning sign of the drugs and alcohol abuse among the youth include the drop in the academic performance, unexplained absence from the school or college, lack of the interest in the personal hygiene, withdrawals, isolation, depression, fatigue, aggressive and rebellious behavior, deteriorating relationship with the family and the friends, loss of the interest in the hobbies, change in the sleeping and the eating habit, the fluctuation in the weight and the appetite, etc. There may even be some far-reaching implication of the drugs or alcohol abuse if the abuser is unable to get money to buy a drugs or alcohol. He or she may turn in a stealing. The adverse effects are just not restricted to the person who is using the drug or alcohol, At times, a drug or alcohol addict becomes a cause of the mental and the financial distress to his or her entire family and the friends. Those who take the drug intravenously, directly injection into the vein using the needle or a syringe, are the much more likely to acquire the serious infection like the AIDS and the hepatitis B. The virus which is responsible for these diseases are transferred from the one person to the another by sharing of the infected needles and the syringe. Both the AIDS and the hepatitis B infection are chronic infections and ultimately fatal. Both can be transmitted through the sexual contact or the infected blood. The use of the alcohol during the adolescence may also have the long-term effect, and it could lead to the heavy drinking in the adulthood. The chronic use of the drug and the alcohol damage nervous system and the liver or a cirrhosis. The use of the drug and the alcohol during the pregnancy is also known as a adversely affect the fetus. The another misuse of the drug is what certain sports persons do to enhance their performance. They misuse the narcotic, analgesic, anabolic steroids or diuretic or a certain hormones in the sport to increase the muscle strength and bulk, and promotes the aggressiveness, and as a result increase the athletic performance. The side effect of the use of the anabolic steroids in the female include the masculinization, that is the feature like the male, and increase the aggressiveness, mood swings, depressions, abnormal menstrual cycle, excessive hair growth on the face and the body, enlargement of the clitoris depending of the voice. The male is include the acne, increase the aggressiveness, mood swing, depression, reduction of the size of the testes, decrease the sperm production, potential for the kidney and the liver dysfunction, breast enlargement, premature baldness, enlargement of the prostate glands. This effect may be the permanent with the prolonged use. In the adolescent male or a female, the several facial body acne are the premature closure of the growth centers of the long bones may result in the stunted growth. The 8.5.4 is the prevention and the control. The age-old adage of the prevention is better than the cure holds the true here also. It is also true that the habits such as the smoking, taking a drug or alcohol are the more likely to be taken up at a young age. The more during the adolescence. Hence it is the best identify and the situation that may push an adolescent toward the use of the drug or alcohol, and to make or to take the remedial measure well in a time. In this regard, the parent and the teachers have a special responsibility. The parenting that combines with high level of the nurturance and the consistent discipline has been associated with the lowered the risk of the substances like the alcohol, drugs or tobacco abuse. The sum of the measure mentioned here would be the particularly useful for the prevention and the control of the alcohol and the drugs abuse among the adolescent. The first is the avoid the undue peer pressure. Every child has his or her own choice and the personality which should be the respect and the nurtured. The child should not be pushed unduly to perform the beyond his or her threshold limit, be it studied, sports and other activities. The second is education and the counseling. Educating and the counseling him or her to face the problem and the stress and to accept the disappointment and the failure as a part of life. It would also be worthwhile to channelize the child energy into the healthy pursuits like the sports, reading, music, yoga, and the other extracurricular activities. The seeking help from the parents and the peers. Help from the parents and the peers should be sought immediately so that they can be guided appropriately. Help may even be sought from the close and the trusted friends. Beside the getting proper advice to sort out their problems, and this would help the young to events their the feeling and anxiety and the guilt. The looking for the danger sign alert the parents and the teachers needs to look for and identify the danger sign discussed above. Even a friend, if they find someone using the drug or alcohol, should not hesitate to bring this to the notice of the parents and the teachers in the best interest of the person concerned. Appropriate measures would then require to diagnose the malady and the underlying the causes. This would help in initiating the proper remedial steps and the treatment. The fifth is seeking the professional and the medical help. A lot of the help is available in the form of the highly qualified psychologist, psychiatric, and the de-addiction and the rehabilitation programs to help the individual who have the unfortunately got in the quagmires of the drugs or alcohol abuse. With such help, and affected individuals with a sufficient effort, willpower can get rid of the problem completely and lead the perfectly life. Now the summary of the human health and the diseases. The health is not just absence of the disease. It is a state of the complete physical, mental, social, and the psychological well-being. Disease like the typhoid, cholera, pneumonia, fungal infection of the skin, malaria, and many other, and the major cause of the distress of the human being. The vector-borne disease like the malaria, especially one caused by the Plasmodium falcicum, if not treated, may prove the fatal. Beside the personal cleanliness and the hygiene, the public health measure the like proper disposal of the waste, decontamination of the drinking water, control of the vectors like the mosquitoes, and immunization are very helpful in preventing these diseases. Our immune system plays a major role in preventing this disease when we are exposed to the disease causing the agent. The innate defense of our body like the skin, mucous membrane, antimicrobial substances present in our tears, saliva, and the phagocytic cells help to block the entry of the pathogens into our body. If the pathogen succeeds in the gaining the entry to our body, the specific antibody or humoral immune response and the cell mediate immune response serve to kill these pathogens. The immune system has a memory on the subsequent exposure to same pathogen, and the immune response is rapid and the more intense. This forms the basis of the protection afforded by the vaccination and the immunization. Among the other diseases, the AIDS and the cancer kill the large number of the individuals worldwide. The AIDS caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, that is the HIV, is fatal but can be prevented if the certain precautions are taken. Many cancers are curable if the detected early and appropriate therapeutic measures are taken. Of latter, the drugs and alcohol abuse among the youth and the adolescent is becoming the another cause of the concern. Because of the addictive nature of the alcohol and the drugs and their perceived the benefit like the relief from the stress, and the person may try taking these in the face and peer pressure, examination and related and the competition related stress. In doing so, he or she may get addicted to them. Education about their harmful effect and the counseling and the seeking immediate professional and the medical help would totally relieve the individual from these evils. Thank you so much.